At 3:12 a.m., Caleb Briggs sat in his truck outside a self-storage facility and stared at a single blurry auction photo like it was a map out of poverty. The unit looked ridiculous. 15 feet of stacked boxes and tubs, collectibles, shoved right up front like someone wanted bidders to get greedy fast. Caleb didn't feel greedy. He felt tired. 48 years old, newly single, 2 kids at home, and a paycheck that always ran out before the month did. He'd promised his son a decent birthday and his daughter a school trip she wouldn't have to pretend she didn't care about. Then the water heater coughed, the car needed brakes, and the promise turned into that familiar, bitter math. He shouldn't have bid. He knew that. But when the auction timer hit the final minute, his thumb moved anyway, and $3,270 vanished into a unit he'd never stepped inside. Now the lock was his, the deadline was his, and the fear was sitting in his chest like a stone. The manager read the rules: cash deposit, sold as is 48 hours to clear, and Caleb nodded like a man who had choices. When the door finally rolled up, the first sight almost made him laugh from pure disbelief. Holiday ornaments still in boxes, sports-themed, brand-new looking. 2 box dolls that had never been opened, and a little wall of figures lined up like somebody's private shrine. The deeper he leaned, the stranger it got. Tubs of die-cast cars with a full set of character racers, every name you'd recognize, stacked together like a completed collection. A cluster of cartoon figures from the old days, still crisp, still clean. A box of fast food toys kept the way kids keep treasure, only this was an adult's handwriting on the lid. Then, behind a sleeping bag shoved sideways like a curtain, he spotted more. Sealed trading cards by the brick, hockey items everywhere, framed jerseys, and candles. So many candles it looked like someone had been stocking a store. Caleb forced himself to slow down. Photos first. Count second. Touch last. That rule was the only thing keeping his hands from shaking. Then he pulled out a heavy, foam-fitted box and saw collector plates packed like fine china. One label bragged about 24-karat gold like it was nothing. Right beside it, buried under a layer of dusty boxes, sat 2 sealed building sets so big they could have been display pieces. His mind tried to sprint ahead to rent, bills, food, school costs, until he noticed something that didn't belong with the rest. Wedged behind the good stuff, taped tight and perfectly squared, was a plain package with a shipping hold tag half torn off, like someone ripped it away in a hurry. And under the front stack, hidden where you'd only see it once you started moving things, Caleb found one bag that wasn't a tote at all. Cinched with a zip tie, weighted too evenly to be random, and placed like it was the real reason the unit looked loaded in the first place. Caleb didn't rip into the mystery bag like a guy chasing a highlight reel. He'd already seen enough easy value up front: sealed Lego sets, bobbleheads, box figures, old die-cast cars, stacks of trading cards, jerseys, ornaments, even Franklin Mint pieces, to know this unit could pay bills without him getting reckless. So he did the boring thing first. He filmed the aisle, photographed the stacks, and moved only what was clearly harmless and sellable into a neat, outgoing row by the door. The more he worked, the stranger the pattern felt. Nothing was random. The boxes weren't tossed. They were layered like someone had built a wall on purpose. The clean collectibles were placed where a buyer would get excited fast, while the deeper bins were stacked like a warehouse, color-coded, consistent, and walked through enough times to leave clear scuff paths on the concrete. When he finally opened the tied bag, it wasn't cash or anything cinematic. It was organization mailers, tape, bubble wrap, a handful of printed packing slips, and a thin notebook with short lists and item counts written in steady handwriting. The notebook didn't read like a family move. It read like a routine. One line kept repeating in different words: leave the back section for last. Don't mix stacks. Don't rush. That was the part that made Caleb's mouth go dry, because he'd already noticed the same thing without touching it. Those light blue tubs in the rear were stacked tighter, cleaner, and newer than everything else, as if they were the real core of the unit. He didn't need to understand the exact business to understand the logic. The front was meant to distract, the middle was meant to pay, and the back was meant to stay controlled. Then the pressure arrived the way real pressure usually does: quiet, polite, and pretending it's nothing. A man pushing a dolly rolled past, slowed down just enough to look natural, and asked if Caleb had seen shipping paperwork or a small folder. The tone was friendly, but the eyes weren't. Caleb kept his voice flat and his answer simple, like he'd learned at parent-teacher conferences when someone's fishing for more than you want to give. He said he'd only started sorting, hadn't seen anything important, and was just trying to clear the unit on time. The man nodded, lingered half a beat too long, then moved on, but Caleb felt the shift in his own body right away. The unit wasn't just valuable, it was interesting to someone who didn't plan on bidding for it. Caleb locked the door, sat on the truck bumper for 1 full minute, and chose the adult version of courage. He stayed methodical. He wouldn't sell anything tied to paperwork. He wouldn't post photos that showed labels. And he wouldn't open the back stack until he had a clean plan for what to do if it turned out to be more than collectibles. Still, he couldn't ignore the pull forever, because every minute he waited was another minute the unit stayed a question mark. He reopened the door, walked straight to the light blue tubs, filmed the stack from top to bottom, and eased the lid off the first one with both hands. Inside, instead of toys or sports gear, were neatly bundled documents, photo sheets with item numbers, and a sealed hard case tucked under a layer of padding, like someone expected it to be the last thing touched. Caleb didn't open the case. He just stared at it, realizing the biggest score in the unit might not be what he could sell. It might be what he'd need to handle correctly to keep the win clean. By Sunday night, the unit stopped feeling like a lucky mess and started feeling like a system someone had built on purpose. Marcus kept pulling out the same strange mix, hockey ornaments still boxed like they'd never seen a tree, sealed bobbleheads, stacks of vintage Matchbox and heavy die-cast cars, tubs of Gretzky cards, and old WWF plush still in their wrappers, even bricks of pennies that made the floor look like it was sprinkled with metal rain. Then the deeper shelves revealed the grown-up money items, Franklin Mint Rose plates sitting in perfect foam, bordered in gold and numbered, sealed Lego sets that made his kids gasp when he showed them photos, and a Coca-Cola phone that looked like it belonged in a display case, not a storage unit. The more he found, the more he understood why the front had been stacked like bait, easy collectibles to get you excited, but also to keep you from noticing how much was still buried. It wasn't random clutter, it was layers, almost like someone had curated just enough on top to distract a tired buyer, while the real value waited deeper where only patience would reach it. The risk wasn't the hauling anymore, it was the temptation to do it fast. Marcus could have dumped everything into one yard sale weekend and walked away with quick cash, but quick cash had burned him before. So he did the slow, adult thing that hurt in the moment. He sorted, documented, and chose the right lanes. The sealed Lego and Franklin Mint pieces went into a do-not-touch corner for consignment, because one torn box could erase hundreds of dollars in a second. The sports cards and figures stayed grouped exactly as found because breaking sets kills value and makes buyers suspicious. The hockey jerseys and anything with authenticity paperwork got its own bin, labeled and photographed, because one missing tag turns a treasure into a headache. He even separated the weird stuff he didn't want around his kids, old tapes with titles that belonged in a locked drawer, not a family living room, because he wasn't going to let one dirty side find poison a clean win. Every choice felt like a tiny argument with his own panic. Sell now, take the hit, breathe today, or do it right, breathe for years. And every time his hands started to move too fast, he pictured his kids at the kitchen table, pretending not to need anything, and forced himself to slow down. The turning point came late on the last afternoon, when Marcus slid out a plain tube that had been wedged behind candle boxes and penguin decor, like it didn't matter. Inside wasn't another poster for the wall. It was a signed print with a certificate tucked behind it, the kind collectors actually pay for, and it was the first time his hands truly shook. Not from greed, but from relief, because this wasn't maybe money. This was real money if you don't mess it up. That night, he sat at his kitchen table after the kids fell asleep and made a plan that sounded boring but felt like freedom. Consign the high-end pieces, bulk sell the low-end cards as lots, list the sealed sets carefully, and keep one small thing for the kids as proof that life can change without warning. He chose the Looney Tunes figures, not because they were the most valuable, but because his youngest laughed like it was the first good laugh in weeks. And that sound reminded Marcus what he was really trying to buy. Less fear in the house. The payout didn't hit like a movie jackpot. It arrived in clean, steady steps. A consignment check from a plate set, a strong sale on the sealed Lego, a surprisingly good offer from a memorabilia dealer on the jerseys once the paperwork matched, and a long line of smaller wins that added up because he kept his head. Marcus paid the bills that had been stalking him, replaced the tires he'd been pretending could last another season, and set up a separate account for school costs so his kids wouldn't have to be careful in that heartbreaking way anymore. Then he did something he hadn't planned, something that made the whole mess feel meaningful instead of random. He bought a used display case, placed it in the living room, and let the kids help build a tiny museum shelf of one save item from the unit and one item from their own life, a report card, a photo, a little trophy. So the story wasn't about stuff, it was about rebuilding. He didn't tell them, this unit saved us, because he didn't want their future tied to luck. He told them, we got through it because we stayed smart, and he meant it. Weeks later, when the unit was finally empty and the last box was gone, Marcus realized what had really changed. He wasn't just less broke. He was less scared. His kids were lighter. Dinner stopped being silent math. And on nights when he passed storage facilities on the way home, he didn't feel the itch to chase another miracle. He'd already gotten the only one he needed. A door rolled up, a life's worth of collectibles spilled out, and he had handled it with enough patience to turn chaos into stability.